Thank you for joining us here at our YWCA Bergen County's Healing Space program, the county's only sexual violence resource center, where we provide vital services to survivors and educate about sexual violence prevention. No survivor of sexual violence comes forward lightly to tell their story. In fact, 2 out of 3 sexual assaults are never reported. Reports should be investigated, whether they happen here locally or against a Supreme Court nominee. One of the most basic needs of all survivors is to be believed. The doubt, criticism, and threats leveled at Dr. Ford have been a painful reminder to all survivors as to why they are often silent in the first place. Victim blaming reinforces survivors' despair that no one will ever really understand what they've been through. It also allows perpetrators who have committed sexual violence to get away with it. When high-profile cases of sexual violence are in the news, hotlines that support survivors, such as RAIN, Rape, Abuse, and Incest National Network, the New Jersey Coalition Against Sexual Assault, and our own YWCA Bergen County's Healing Space hotline, typically receive more calls from survivors. When the New York Times reported on sexual harassment and sexual assault by Hollywood giant Harvey Weinstein in the fall of 2017, our hotline calls, our requests for counseling, and accompaniments to medical and legal proceedings significantly increased. Since Dr. Ford came forward with her allegation of sexual assault against Judge Kavanaugh, RAIN reported a 46% increase in hotline calls compared to the same period of last year. When Deborah Ramirez came forward with her allegation of sexual misconduct against Judge Kavanaugh, RAIN reported a 57% increase in hotline calls as compared to their average weekend. And then last Thursday, during the Kavanaugh hearings, RAIN reported a 147% increase in hotline calls versus a typical weekday. Speaking from our recent experience at Healing Space, throughout the week, the Kavanaugh hearings were most definitely a disturbing and pervasive topic between survivors and our clinical team. During the month of September, our hotline calls spiked 61% higher than the month before. And comparing September 2017 to September 2018, we saw a 518% increase in hotline calls. That goes from 34 to 210. And let me also say that every caller that called us this past Friday mentioned the Kavanaugh matter in their call. This increase is what led our program to quickly pull together and offer a solidarity circle for survivors on Thursday evening. We wanted survivors to have a safe place to go if they needed additional support. With just the word out for just a few short hours, we had 25 survivors and their allies join us with our support staff to be here together with one another. The stories they shared were similar to the calls we had been receiving. Survivors are trying to live their lives productively, but feeling paralyzed from the information being shared on the news and how Dr. Ford is being treated. We had male and female survivors with us for our Solidarity Circle, and I think it's important to also note that this is triggering all survivors. We must remember that the abuse of power is at the core of sexual assault, and making out what we are seeing today play out with the Supreme Court nomination is adding to that re-traumatization because of that play of power. It is extremely difficult for survivors to come forward and share their stories. They may feel ashamed, concerned that they won't be believed, or worried that they will be blamed. Survivors may blame themselves, especially if they know their perpetrator personally, as many survivors do. So what do survivors of sexual violence need to hear from their friends, their families, their communities, their houses of worship, and their governments? I believe you. It is not your fault. You are not alone. This should not have happened to you. Please support survivors and believe them. If you are a survivor or have been impacted by sexual violence in another way, I encourage you to reach out for confidential help from qualified resources such as YWCA Bergen County's Healing Space. Our local hotline number is 201 844-887-2227, and our statewide hotline number, run by NJCASA, is 1-800-601-7200. In addition to our 24/7 hotline support available to survivors, sexual violence resource centers like ours provide accompaniments to medical, legal, and court proceedings associated with sexual violence, crisis intervention, individual and group counseling for survivors and those impacted by sexual violence, legal advocacy and support, prevention and community education for schools, college campuses, and the community at large on various topics like media literacy and bystander intervention, and professional training. And when people are wondering what else can they do, I say vote and encourage others to vote. Tell your elected officials to support legislation that supports survivors and helps prevent sexual violence, such as the reauthorization of the Violence Against Women Act, especially now as federal funding for sexual violence education, prevention, and support is acutely at threat. Donate your time, money, or needed goods to organizations like ours that are directly supporting survivors of sexual violence and their loved ones, as well as providing community and professional education. You can get involved with local initiatives like the YWCA Bergen County's Time Is Now Action Coalition to help change the culture around sexual violence and sexual harassment. And most importantly, believe survivors.